We're looking at a review here of the Pythagorean theorem. I would suggest writing down everything that I write down here. This will be very helpful when you take your checkup. So please make sure you get it down. So this is a review. Okay, and what are we reviewing? We're reviewing what we call the Pythagorean theorem. What is the Pythagorean theorem? That pen's not working very well. The Pythagorean theorem is when we have a right triangle. How do we know we have a right triangle? Well, we have this square in the corner of our triangle. So if we have a right triangle, then we can use this formula, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So the most probably important thing is that across from that right angle is the c. This is called the hypotenuse, and it is the longest side. It is the longest side. So we're going to just jump right in and do 4 problems here for a review. And I'm telling you, hint, 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 that these 4 problems are similar to your checkup. Remember a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And remember that the hypotenuse is c, always the longest side, and across from that right angle. That's all I've got for you. Look at the first one. We have a right triangle. How do I know that? Because here is my right angle. I always draw my arrow across from my right angle. That means we are finding the longest side, c. So we're going to use our formula, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So the 2.4 and the 1.7 are your a and b. Doesn't matter which one goes where. Let's just go ahead and put them in. So 2.4, we're going to square it, plus 1.7, we're going to square it, and that equals c squared. So if I do that on my calculator, 2.4 squared, that means 2.4 times 2.4, which is 5.76, plus the 1.7 times 1.7, squared means times itself, is 2.89. And that equals c squared. We want to go ahead and add those 2 numbers together. Again, if I'm going a little too quick, feel free to pause it so you get everything written down. And I get 8.65. But that equals c squared. And if we recall what the inverse of squaring a number is, it's taking the square root. Whatever we do to one side, we do to the other. This cancels out the squared, and we end up with c equals, and the square root of 8.65, we're going to round to the nearest tenth, is 2.9. 2.9. That would be our answer for C. And remember, C has to be the longest side. But 2.9 is longer than 2.4, and 2.9 is longer than 1.7. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one. Of problems finding the hypotenuse. Let's go ahead and look at this problem, and I see that I have a right triangle because we have the square in the corner. That means it's a 90-degree angle right triangle. Across from that is my C value. I have my longest side on this one. It is 8.6. So we can plug our numbers into our formula. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. I know my c, so I'm going to put that in first. 8.6 squared. So the 2.3 can be the a or the b. It does not matter. I'm going to put it in for the a. So I'm going to put 2.3 in for the A. So what does that mean I'm finding? That means I got to find B. We don't know what B is. So we're going to solve for our B. So we're going to start with our 2.3 squared, and we get 5.29. Plus B squared equals, and 8.6 squared is 73.96. I'm going to change colors to red, and I'm going to move to the bottom. I just don't have a ton of room left. How do I get B all by itself? I'm going to subtract the 5.29 from both sides. So we have B squared equals, this is where I've moved to the bottom, that's 73.96, take away 5.29 is 68.67. But that's what B squared equals. The inverse of squaring a number is taking the square root on both sides, so it cancels out my exponent on B, so I'm left with B equals, and when I take the square root of 68.67, I get 8.3. This, remember, we got to make sure A and B have to be smaller than C. And 8.3 is smaller than the 8.6. Our biggest side, our longest side is always C. Let's go to the next one. These kinds. What you notice on this triangle is I don't know if it's a right angle. They didn't tell you. What you also notice is they gave you all the sides. So we are going to actually use the Pythagorean theorem and try to determine if this is going to make a right angle. It's very important that we get our numbers in the correct spot, and the most important number to locate first is the longest side, which is 5, which would have to be my C. So we'll go ahead and put that one in for C because we know longest side is C. Let's go ahead and put 3 and 4 in for my A and B. Remember, A and B, it doesn't matter which is which. C has to be the longest side. And we're going to see if this makes a right angle. Does the left side equal the right? 3 times 3, or 3 squared, is 9. 4 squared is 16. And 5 squared is 25. Is 9 plus 16 equal to 25? Yes, 25 equals 25. So what does that mean? Yes, a right triangle. We can put the right angle in the triangle. This will make a right triangle. These 3 sides, A and B squared equals C squared. This one I had a triangle for you in a visual. Going to have a problem. It is asking which of these are right triangles, and there could be more than one. The most important thing I would probably do first is figure out C. Well, I know on the first triangle, C is going to be 13. It's the biggest side. So does 5 squared plus 12 squared equal 13 squared? We're identifying if this is a right triangle. We have 25 plus 144, does that equal 169? And yes, this triangle, if you add 25 and 144, does equal 169. This is a right triangle. Okay, looking at my next problem, I know 17 is bigger than 15, but let's find out what is the square root of 514. This would be 22 something, 22.67. So that's going to be the biggest side. Got to find my biggest side first. So on triangle 2, this is going to be my C. So let's try it. 17 squared plus 15 squared. Does that equal the square root of 514 squared? Remember, A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So if we take 17 and square it, we get 289. If we take 15 and square it, we get 225. And if we take the square root of 514 and square it, remember these symbols cancel out and you just get 514. So 225 plus 289 does equal 514. This is a yes. This triangle will make a right angle. Let's look at the next one. Identify the longest side. What is C? C would be 10 here. So is 6 squared plus 8 squared equal to 10 squared? 6 times 6 is 36. 8 squared, or 8 times 8, is 64. 10 times 10 is 100. Does 36 plus 64 equal 100? Yes, this triangle also works. We need to identify C on the next problem. And C on this next problem is actually going to be the 8. It's the biggest side. So the square root of 26 squared plus the square root of 28 squared, does that equal 8 squared? And when we take the square root of a number and square it, these cancel. So we have 26 plus 28. Does that equal 8 squared, which is 64? So 26 plus 28 actually equals 54. This does not work. Not a right triangle. How about you go ahead and check triangle 5 and triangle 6? This is what your checkup is going to look like.